the body needs to go through all these different waves, these permutations of searching for its own truth. Sometimes we get lost. As we get lost, different patterns need to be expressed and be healed. And it's like a very oscillating kind of process. It's necessary for these different types of blockages to emerge so that we can be present with them and use our attentiveness to allow them to dissolve. I think that's part of the experience.
Michael Leberknight is one of the most profound healers that I've ever had the pleasure to work with. He studied a vast number of systems, from acupuncture and craniosacral therapy to Kundalini yoga and triple vagal therapy, all while deepening his own consciousness journey. I wanted to have him on the show to discuss what he's learned in his many years of healing others.
There are certain points along the center of the body, like the third eye, or all the chakras essentially. All the chakras are within this great central channel and can be accessed through different acupoints along the channel. Those all pertain to different aspects of consciousness. I think all acupoints actually pertain to different aspects of consciousness, but especially these really important ones. Like the top of the head and the bottom of the body would be anchored to the most yang, and the perineum would be the most yin. Unlocking these different areas, there's certain blocks and different gates that if they're unlocked, then the fruits of those areas can be unlocked too, which absolutely pertain to different aspects of consciousness.
Michael shares the power of allowing the healing to occur versus trying to make it happen.
There can be different levels of awareness of that awareness itself, and uncovering that is important. I feel that deep healing really happens with presence and with attending to what's happening, and also allowing feeling to happen, allowing emotions to be expressed, allowing trauma to be seen without getting stuck in story, just shining the light of awareness without attachment.
Trusting our bodies seems to play a big role in the healing process.
I think that a big part of the healing arts is to help whoever's being healed feel that they can heal themselves, trust that their body knows what to do. And in a different dimension, working on the body, a lot of what's happening is reminding the body that it can release, or that it can relax, or that it's strong, or that it's safe.
We also discuss the role of our inner wisdom in healing. Often the guides and teachers around us are just pointing us back to the things that we already know.
The teacher is the inner guru. It's the inner guidance, that gut instinct, that inner knowing. Any teacher will be pointing you to the wisdom of the inner teacher that we all have. That's really important, is to listen to intuition, to follow what we already know for ourselves. It's easy to search externally for, I feel that we have the next steps of what we need. Is, can we actually listen to that? Or do we need some master to tell us what we already know, or a different aspect of it?
Before we get into this conversation, I want to ask you to join this amazing community of consciousness explorers. This whole idea of pursuing expanded consciousness and the boundaries of human potential while living a modern life is relatively new, which is why we interview revered masters, teachers, experts, and practitioners to help you on your own journey. To stay up to date on the latest conversations, simply click subscribe below and you'll be notified each time a new episode comes out. I am so grateful for all of your support and comments. I love reading them. Now let's dive into this conversation. Michael, it's amazing to be having this conversation with you, man.
Yeah, I'm honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, there's so many ways I would like to take this, but maybe to frame things up, when did the healing arts really become an area of interest for you?
It's been a part of me my whole life, I think. But I went through this magic school, this Jedi training academy in Crestone, Colorado. And that was maybe 8 years ago. And that really propelled me forward. There's so many different dimensions to explore, like my time in the university studying psychology that played a part in interest in human behavior and in the brain. And there's lots of different ways that I could look at that question.
So, I feel like a lot of us, we hear about mystery schools, different places to learn kind of deep or forgotten wisdom. How did you come across a magic school, and what was that like?
I have been a part of this Kundalini yoga community and went on to study Kundalini yoga and teach it a bit. And a beautiful friend of mine, Bucket Beer, introduced me to Dan and Sue, the teachers at this school. And Dan is a Aikido master and studied with lots of different elders and holders of different traditions. And it's just really beautiful to have the opportunity to be in his dojo, which was a 3-month intensive, just doing Qigong every day, getting really into Chinese medicine and Reiki and different elements of the healing arts. So that, I think Qigong in nature, praying with trees, praying with the water, praying with the sun, maybe had the most impact on me. And that was really important for me.
Do you think, so a question I have with this is, I've heard that certain mystery schools, it's more kind of like the school finds you than you find the school. Like a lot of these things aren't advertised. There's not like you can go online and say, hey, I want to learn magic. It's kind of more like you just flow into these places, or they find you. Was that how this unfolded for you?
Yeah, definitely. I would say so.
Like, do they brand that they teach this stuff, or is that more behind a more approachable facade?
I find that the deepest masters are ones that find you or ones that you hear about with word of mouth. And I don't mean to pedestalize this teacher that much, although he's beautiful and dear to me. But yeah, very much like that. I was very fortunate to hear about this school. It was a 3-month intensive, and usually massage schools are 6 or 9 months or a year. And like, I went out feeling so capable of offering aid to people in many different ways just after 3 months. It's like it was a time portal where sometimes time behaves in a different way.
Wow.
And so much can be downloaded. So that was a really important event in my timeline, for sure.
And what would you say the biggest paradigm shift or wisdom that came from that experience was?
I think the core of that program was learning Qigong foundations, like earth below, heaven above, or focusing on spirals, or breathing into the lower dantian, just moving with the breath, noticing the dantian, which is right below the belly button, and the Ming Men, the gate of destiny behind the spine, and how they kind of have this accordion-like motion, the relationship between the front and back and the up and down, and honoring the directions. And there are many different foundations, but we were taught to use those and infuse the healing work that we do with Reiki. And then we were diligently practicing Qigong the whole time and cultivating from nature, which was really important.
Could you talk more about the significance of cultivating from nature?
Yeah, I think it was maybe the most important sadhana I ever did. I was for 90 days praying with my tree, where you bow deeply to the tree, you take 3 steps towards it, and you bow in deep reverence, and then without touching the tree, you're just allowing this microcosmic orbit to go up your, you're governing conception vessels, but you're including the tree in that without touching it and just feeling the communion.
So you're kind of merging with it.
It's very tantric, yes. And the same kind of idea can be done with the water, though it's different, with different plants, with the stars, with the sun. We were practicing different variations of that as Like, it was such an intensive program that was a necessary component to be charged enough with chi to be able to do what we needed to do.
Wow. So that type of experience is something they talk a lot about in the lineage I've been studying, Ren Shui, where you can essentially become unified with different objects. And as a part of that process, receive the information from those objects. And so part of the merging with the tree was to basically increase your life force and chi. That's kind of, was there other things that came out of that?
Sure. Yeah. And the tree is a metaphor. It's a teacher that stood for a really long time, that's overseen the change of the seasons. And we're like trees too, where we're tethered to the earth through our feet and our crown. Our byway is connected up to the heavens, and it's just noticing the tree as a teacher, or any person on the table, any element of nature as a teacher, just being humbled, and then also really feeling the flow of energy.
Could you talk about what the microcosmic orbit is? I imagine there's some people that probably haven't heard of it.
Sure. There's an excellent free course on it taught by this Qigong teacher who I've been studying with named Damo Mitchell, which I'd recommend. And he goes really in depth into it. But essentially, we have this reservoir of energy that feeds the 12 meridians in Chinese medicine. This is called the Great Central Channel. And we have the governing vessel, which goes from the coccyx all the way up the center of the spine, down here. And then we have from the perineum, the conception vessel, which goes up the center of the body to here. So it's just this orbit right along the line or the center of the body that we're charging. And there can be certain blockages along different portions of this circle, right? But it's the natural movement of energy, and it serves as a reservoir for different organs or different meridians that might be deficient or excess. So it's a storage of energy, and it's happening naturally. And there can be certain blocks within that flow.
And so the idea is to basically have that running smoothly, that channel running smoothly.
Yeah.
And how does that impact the consciousness when that happens?
There are certain points along the center of the body, like the third eye, or all the chakras, essentially. All the chakras are within this great central channel and can be accessed through different acupoints along the channel. And those all pertain to different aspects of consciousness. I think all acupoints actually pertain to different aspects of consciousness, but especially these really important ones, like the top of the head and the bottom of the body would be anchored to the most yang, and the perineum would be the most yin. And unlocking these different areas, there's certain blocks, different gates that if they're unlocked, then the fruits of those areas can be unlocked too, which absolutely pertain to different aspects of consciousness.
Yeah, unblocking the chi gates is a big part of the Qigong teachings that I've done. And it's an interesting phenomena because you can do a lot of Qigong and you just start to receive information that maybe perhaps you weren't aware of before. Like, what enters your awareness is more than just your thoughts. It's insights, it's sensations. It's kind of just, you're just more in tune with everything around you.
Yeah.
And so it's a fascinating process because it's not obvious where you're like, oh, I felt a chi gate unblock. No, this is what my life is going to look like. Mm-hmm. To me, it's felt more just like a gradual unfoldment that your perception and the information that you're aware of just starts to become more expansive.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. So you went to this mystery school really got some profound teachings. What were other key inflection points in your journey as a healer?
I went through a structural integration program at the University of Taos, a Rolfing program. That was 780 hours.
Wow.
That was really profound, going into studying the fascia and the organs and the structure of the body. I later went to take 13 craniosacral therapy courses with a teacher, Etienne Pierceman, this master from Belgium. That was profound, going into like the subtlety of holding different structures, different parts of the brain, and sometimes holding them for 5, 10, 20 minutes and just allowing things to start to breathe and start to change.
I'm craniosacral to me, it's like this untapped well of amazingness. I've had such profound experiences and openings with craniosacral, and I don't actually know how it works. Could you just share a brief, like high level, what is craniosacral?
Sure. Well, you have the cranium and you have the sacrum. And between these two structures, there's this sleeve of fascia that cerebral spinal fluid spirals up and down constantly. And again, it's like there can be blockages along that flow of the nervous system. And there are different functions of this fluid, but it's just unlocking different aspects of the nervous system to allow for unobstructed flow of fluid within different membranes. It's also working on specific parts of the brain, which is really cool because of my psychology and neuroscience background, to be able to come back into fascination with the brain.
I remember I once had a craniosacral person tell me that an amazing healer in the Miami area tell me that my brain was expanding from craniosacral, which was a fascinating phenomena that I had never heard anybody talk about before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely all possible. It's like all the bones in the body, all the organs, like all the cells, they are programmed. They have this capacity to move in a certain way, and they want to. Within the brain, there are all these sutures. There are things that the bones are really tethered together in a firm way, but they can breathe and they want to breathe. And if they're able to increase their movement capacity, then they can express their functions, which is what they want to do.
So it sounds like a unifying theme in this process of healing that also coincides with well-being and potential is these removing these blockages so that the natural essence and capacities can express themselves.
Yeah.
So what are the causes of these blockages?
It can be so many. Different kinds of traumas, different types of pain patterns. They can be ancestral, they can be generational, they can be emotional, they can be spiritual. It's just, I think there are many causes, but it's somehow getting lost and forgetting our divinity, I think, is core. The body needs to go through all these different waves, these permutations of searching for its own truth. And sometimes we get lost, and as we get lost, different patterns need to be expressed and be healed. And it's like a very oscillating kind of process. It's necessary for these different types of blockages to emerge so that we can be present with them and use our attentiveness to allow them to dissolve.
And it seems like that is kind of the oscillating movement where the awareness allows you to essentially become aware of some type of block that's been outside of our conscious awareness for whatever reason. And then as we embrace and allow and open, that block can clear, which then creates a primes us to be in a more aware, conscious state. And it's kind of this just like back and forth motion has been my experience. Is that typical?
I think so. I think that's part of the experience. There can be different levels of awareness of that awareness itself, and uncovering that is important, I think.
Mm.
But I feel that deep healing really happens with presence and with attending to what's happening, and also allowing feeling to happen, allowing emotions to be expressed, allowing trauma to be seen without getting stuck in story, just shining the light of awareness without attachment.
Yeah, I heard you use a word yesterday in our session where you said it was like tension, like allowing tension or something like that. It was a very cool expression I never heard before.
I don't remember what it was.
I think you said, yeah, put your attention on it. And you said acceptance and allowing tension, which was very cool.
Yeah, that sounds right.
So, okay, craniosacral, and then was there any other major modalities that have had a big impact or inform kind of how you work with people?
Yeah, I studied this modality called triple vagal method. I took 2 courses in that, which is utilizing it's applied polyvagal theory. It's a different way to look at the nervous system as craniosacral therapy, and it's been helpful. I find that generally is working with different acupoints in the body and allowing for more of an efficient toggling between sympathetic and different types of parasympathetic to allow for more vagal tone within the vagus nerve. That's another huge study that's been fascinating. It's essentially going into trauma healing.
And so, one of the questions I've had for you is like, I've went to a lot of body workers and a lot of healers and a lot of these type of people. And, you definitely have like a very profound, I don't even know how to describe it, just capacity to help me access a lot of this stuff that is obstructing that higher functioning. Mm-hmm. What do you think, just in the broad category of healing, like why is it that some healers tend to be more powerful than others?
For me, there's this constant process of wanting to be humbled and wanting to develop consciousness and seeking truth and holding myself to a certain level where I need to be vibrating at a certain frequency so that there can be resonance and so healing can happen. So just that devotion to the endless journey of understanding and dropping and stillness and presence. And I can't really speak to other healing artists. Essentially, the person on the table is the healer, and beyond that, God is the healer, or divinity is the healer. So consecrating, like we were saying yesterday, just allowing the fruits, offering the fruits of all thoughts, words, actions, sensations, emotions, processes, the fruits of all of that to source for the highest of the client, of myself, of all living beings, and it's constantly just making it a practice to get out of the way is a huge part of it. And it's ongoing. It's a life journey for sure.
I want to dig more into what that experience is like, but I guess just a high level, I just want to understand this a little bit more. The relationship between someone's consciousness and their capacity to be essentially a channel or a vessel to the divine is the idea that as the personal vibration increases, it's that channel is easier to access or more powerful. How is the frequency, the personal frequency or vibration related to that?
It probably depends. Yeah, the more we constantly open ourselves up and get out of the way, the more the crown, for instance, might open, or different centers along the microcosmic orbit might open, different blockages might be released, more the voice or the Vishuddha, the throat chakra might open, just the more the heart will open. There's always this oscillation of different aspects of ourselves breaking down and opening more. It's like very organically, like a breath, and that's constantly happening. And we all are vessels, whether or not we know it, of the divine to move through.
You know, it's interesting that you share that motion, because that opening, closing, expanding, contracting is like the universal chi movement that is taught in the wisdom tradition that I'm in. You know, all things kind of have that movement. So the notion that our own transformational journey would occur as a reflection of that makes a lot of sense to me. So what is the experience then like as someone doing the healing on someone in the way that you described?
It depends on what's happening. Depends on where I'm at and where the client's at and what they need, what their intention is. It can be very physical, it can be very emotional, it can be almost shamanic or very spiritual. So I intend to get out of the way and be present with what is, with what the client feels that they need, and also what their body is communicating and what their essence is communicating. There's like different levels of communication happening where my being is communing with theirs, and then my body is also communing with theirs. And the practice for me is I have a toolkit and I can have some kind of plan, but essentially it's like to trust that my hands and my being know what to do, to go in with as little of a plan as possible, to intellectualize as little as possible, and just be fully present and trust in the divinity moving through me to do what needs to happen. And that's a journey. It's a meditation, really. Goes back to those Qigong foundations too, from Crestone, just noticing the connection between heaven and earth, noticing my own flow energy, just being present with myself.
So in the experience, because there's times where you've said things to me like, wow, I've never done that before, which is always fun. And so the experience is very much like you as an awareness is seeing what's emerging and kind of just allowing that to happen and going with the flow, with the kind of holding your toolkit at the same time.
Yeah. Sometimes there's a goal that I might have, or usually the nature of a session presents itself through the session, and then everything after the session feels like it was leading towards working on that thing. Like an example might be like old primal fear in the kidney. Like the session might emerge around that and end up spending a lot of time on the connections with the kidney and the connections with the adrenals, and then it's like following breadcrumbs towards what needs to happen.
I hope you're enjoying this conversation so far. If you like what you hear, let me know by clicking like, subscribing to the channel, and responding with a comment around something that you found interesting in the conversation so far. In addition to these videos, I do a lot of writing on the exploration of consciousness and my own personal revelations in my newsletter called Consciousness, the Doorway to Human Evolution. To receive these updates and more, all you need to do is simply head to the link in the description below, and you'll be added to the community of 20,000 plus consciousness explorers receiving weekly ideas and inspiration in their inbox. I look forward to hearing from you there. Now let's get back to the show. There's a great book called A Lion Tracker's Guide to Life by a gentleman named Boyd Vardy, who is going to come on the podcast. And the whole idea is like, you don't track a lion by like knowing where it's going to go. It's like you just follow the next footprint, the next set of footprints, and eventually, you know, the lion reveals itself.
Yeah.
So it's very beautiful that the healing process seems to work the same way.
Yeah, the body leads the way. It's like if we can listen to what the body wants and what it needs within ourselves, like oftentimes for our own healing, we know what we need, and sometimes we don't listen. And sometimes we do. Often we know what we need to do for ourselves without needing somebody to band-aid us or like fix things. Like we know what we need to do to be on the next level of consciousness, or to refine our being, or to move forward oftentimes. And it's okay to need help along the way. We can all help each other, you know?
Definitely. That's a really, I think, a really interesting point, where there was a period of time where I realized for my own journey that all the healing capacity was actually within myself. And that was immensely empowering. And part of that experience was just learning how to, as an awareness, kind of give instructions to my body while also listening to it. And what was funny is there was a knee-jerk reaction to working with healers when that happened, where I was like, oh, well, I don't need to, I'm denying my own healing capacity by going and working with a healer. And I eventually realized that was actually a big misconception. And that there's actually, yes, you have your own self-healing capacity, but there's also all of these amazing resources around you that are there to help you, that are there to be part of the journey.
Yeah.
And so why limit yourself and not use that as well?
For sure. Yeah, there are all these tools. Really, everything and everybody is a teacher, but certain teachers are going to speak to us more profoundly, and certain resonances are really going to be useful for us and open up new realms of possibility within ourselves of like how we can heal ourselves. I think that a big part of the healing arts is to help whoever's being healed feel that they can heal themselves, or trust that their body knows what to do. And in a different dimension, working on the body, a lot of what's happening is reminding the body that it can release, or that it can relax, or that it's strong, or that it's safe. And once that happens, like different layers of movement can happen. It's really interesting, just the different layers of, like, there might be an emotion within a certain organ or tissue or bone, and the emotion might release before the bone, or maybe the bone will release and then the emotion will release. It's like embedded in the fascia are just different layers of being. It's fascinating. It's super cool. So I think it's useful to like feel into the fascination of what's happening, of how much of a miracle this vessel is, of how much of a miracle it is to be alive. And it's remembering divinity. I think remembering divinity and being present with it's a huge part of healing and being a human.
What do you think, for people that maybe don't have as much exposure with things like self-healing or recognizing that, like, what are some things that people could do to make contact with what you're discussing?
I think engaging in different spiritual practices is really important. Qigong and Kundalini yoga and Tantra and Hatha yoga, meditation. There are many things that are really pivotal for me, and just like creating inner intimacy. That's really important. And then being around certain inspiring teachers or individuals that can open us up, being open-minded to new aspects of reality, spending time in nature is huge, just in honoring the sacredness of that.
I'm interested to, I know at one point in time you went to you went to India for a couple months, and I got the sense that you had some big upgrades in your experience, and I would just be curious to get your perspective on, that idea that like being around certain beings can actually shift us in profound ways.
Yeah, I was in India almost 5 months earlier this year, and I'll be back later this year, I think. And there's so many special beings on this planet. We all are, but there's certain beings that just being in their field of energy, being in their presence, you might feel a wave of complete stillness in the mind, or complete inner peace, or resounding love. There might be like a really strong kind of Shakti energy that's just like empowering. There are different flavors depending on the being, right? You've experienced this.
I have big time. The notion of a chi field and what that can do is a big part of the Ren Shui lineage, where the main teacher, who I would consider very profound master, has his own field, but also intentionally builds a field to do the teachings and practices in. And when you are inside of that, when you are there and you're in that field, you do feel profound difference.
Yeah.
You're in a much deeper experience. You can feel the open-heartedness much easier. And it seems like a huge accelerant to a lot of this work.
Yeah.
Like being in that person, doing the same meditation inside of that type of field versus not being in that type of field. My experience has been that the progress and the steps you can make are vastly accelerated by being in that field.
Absolutely. Those types of beings are rare. I feel that the true ones are word of mouth beings. Like, you can't really just Google enlightened beings, and maybe you can, but there are lots of charlatans too.
Definitely. And I do think it is an inner compass. Your internal feeling and sensitivity around those people is much more, I think, a much more valuable compass than, say, the content that comes out of that person's mouth. Like, there's a lot of charismatic people on YouTube talking about spirituality.
Definitely.
But it's often the essence in the field that's more impactful than necessarily someone saying the right things that they got from somebody else in a charismatic way.
I feel that any of those teachers that are really in their truth and potentially enlightened on that level are really in a place of stillness, where words are just to help people that come understand, to guide the way, but the real teachings are always, I can't say always for anything like this, but I feel that the real teachings are stillness.
Yeah, it's amazing. The main teacher, Yuensei is his name. He talks about how he talks with words, but what he's really doing is actually spending a lot more time communicating on a heart-to-heart level with everyone. And so there's this kind of illusion that getting all these teachings and all these things, but the transformation's actually occurring at a much deeper level that for certain people may be hard to perceive.
Yeah, they're transmissions. Oftentimes there are different dimensions of teachings happening at the same time, where there's an energetic transmission, and then there also might be a transmission of words. That might be, for a whole satsang, a whole group of people, the words might be attending to the whole group, and at the same time, there might be this feeling that there's this targeting where they're speaking right to you at the same time, and there's an energetic transmission while they're holding the whole group. I've felt that with different beings.
Definitely. And I will say there's also like certain words where you just hear one word and that word triggers something, and that creates a big opening. Just to give an example of that, we were doing this Qigong practice at this retreat, and the teacher said, disappear into your practice. And I was like, disappear? Oh, wow. And that triggered this concept for me that, wait a second, I can just surrender this entire practice to the true self.
Mm-hmm.
And as I did that, I just was like, all right, I'm just going to, whatever you want to do here, just do. And my body started to spontaneously do the practice in a complete sense of presence, no thoughts, no intentions, no movement, for 30 minutes, just did the entire choreography of the practice. And it was a very profound kind of wu-wei experience that is now just how I do Qigong. And, it was just that one word. It was that one word that kind of nudged me onto a deeper level.
Yeah, it's beautiful, man.
Yeah,
words can be anchors for sure.
For sure.
I feel like good teachers can see what we need as individuals and guide us by knowing how we think and how we feel to help us in a unique way of arriving somewhere.
I know a lot of it, the teacher thing is a very fascinating phenomena because I think a lot of people desire to be around these type of beings. They desire to have someone that can help, elevate their experience and open them up and help them show truth. But there's kind of this, like, the teacher will find you when you're ready type thing going on. And so what advice or insight would you share to anybody who maybe wants to have a teacher, wants to be around these type of individuals, but just doesn't really know how to get there?
Well, first of all, the teacher is the inner guru. It's the Satguru. That inner guidance, that gut instinct, that inner knowing. Any teacher will be pointing you to the wisdom of the inner teacher that we all have. So that's really important, is to listen to intuition, to follow what we already know for ourselves. It's easy to search externally for something that, like, I feel that we have the next steps of what we need. Can we actually listen to that? Or do we need some master to tell us what we already know or a different aspect of it? That's one point. There are lots of different books and resources that can help guide us, like the study of non-dualism, especially with this book, I Am That, which I know that you have. Really changed my life, by Nisargadatta Maharaj. They're different masters that if you can read their words, some of that wisdom can be imparted even through written words. And just staying open. It's being discerning about different teachers. Again, there are lots of charlatans. There are lots of beings that don't necessarily have pure intention. And sometimes it might take joining some cults or getting lost or, to discover who's real, who we're ready for, and what we can actually learn from. There are teachers. I intend to go back to Tiruvannamalai, India, and I feel a huge resonance with this place. There are many enlightened masters that live there around the sacred mountain Arunachala. And that had a huge impact on me. As there may be 5 or 6 different different beings that there are many beings. If we're truly ready, we'll find them. They'll find us. So I think that trust in that is really important. And also this to get to the point of recognizing that everything is a divine teacher. Every being is teaching us a lesson, and like, can we really pay attention to that? Can we really be open? Making time for meditation and stillness, I think, is really essential. Just deepening in stillness. And there's this school, Hridaya, that I've been studying at in Mexico. This yoga school that had a huge impact on me too, and I would recommend doing a silent retreat there.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, there's this amazing aspect of the consciousness journey that I've observed where the wisdom or knowledge or insight appears in perfect timing as you're ready. And so, and that's because the life is a teacher and you are life. And it's life is essentially guiding you to become aware of the deeper truth of who you are constantly. And so, yeah, I would just comment on my 2 cents on this would be, just continue to work on uplifting yourself however you feels right and resonant for you. And eventually, yeah, if you're meant to encounter some amazing being, like they will just come into your field.
Yeah. And when that happens, realize that that's divine grace and be grateful.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It's a piece too. Yeah, I agree.
So are there things that you haven't yet studied that you're excited about studying?
I'm about to start another Rolfing program with the American Guild of Structural Integration in Boulder, and that starts in less than 2 weeks. So I'll be commuting between Boulder and Austin for that. So that'll be a 2-month intensive to deepen into studying the fascia and studying the organs and the bones and the structure of the body from a Western medical standpoint, which will be really useful for different cases of people that have specific injuries and surgeries and stuff like that. So that's beautiful. Amidst this course with this integral anatomist named Gil Headley, whose work I'd really recommend. And it's a study of the different layers of the body, and it's hard to describe this kind of work. He's one of the lead dissection artists in the world. And it's a beautiful teacher, just lots of beautiful teachers. I'm doing this traditional Chinese medicine year 1 theory course right now with this teacher I mentioned, Damel Mitchell, who has this free microcosmic orbit course. So that'll go on to acupuncture. And I was in 4 semesters of acupuncture school and definitely would like to finish that study of acupuncture. And it's finish. You can't finish that study. Chinese medicine is so deep. So yeah. Definitely nerding about
lots of stuff.
Chinese medicine. That's just within the healing arts realm, but really arriving more and more at the point of the knowing that I don't need to pursue more knowledge or know more, that I have enough, that I am enough, that I'm not the doer of my actions, that whatever needs to move through will move through, and the aspect of my being that's searching will search without need to hold that egoic kind of need to be ready for something or uncover more or gain mastery in something. So I'd say that's the main thing, is just the teaching that I know enough, and the teaching of stillness, of complete dissolution, of truth, of essence.
There's this teacher named Andrew Nugent who runs a school called the Traditional Studies, and they teach acupuncture, but it's also a Taoist teaching school. And he talks about the number one thing you can do to improve your ability as an acupuncturist is to realize more of the Tao.
Yeah,
it's not a function of more information, right
exactly.
tactic or right technique.
Hmm.
It's a more of a function of awareness and realization.
Yes, I fully agree with that.
That's beautiful. What do you like? Where do you see like the type of work that you do? To me, I see as working at a fundamental level.
Mm.
Like so much of ailments and disease and different things, it kind of is like they're more downstream expressions
Mm.
of something that's out of harmony, or ready to be seen, ready to be healed.
Hmm.
And the Western medical system doesn't really acknowledge parts of that perspective.
Hmm.
And so I'm just curious, kind of like, how do you see the way we work on our health and bodies evolving?
Mm. I think it goes back to awareness of our own tendencies, like that curiosity to understand ourselves. And within Chinese medicine, a big part of that is understanding our own constitutional framework. And different disease patterns can emerge based off of different types of imbalances within the elements of fire, earth, metal, water, wood, and how that pertains to the different organs. So that's part of how I see the kind of journey of manifestation of disease. But oftentimes things, mm, disease emerges because we're not paying attention to something.
Mm,
So
truth.
paying attention is important. And then also upkeeping the body before things emerge is really important. And also having some level of detachment from, like, there needs to be an eagerness to heal, and the healing journey is trying to uncover and resolve different tensions, but also learning to rest in the being is really important too. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, kind of forgot the question really. So
Yeah.
it's all good. One interesting thing I heard you say yesterday actually was how isn't it amazing that the body can make all these adaptations
Mm.
to essentially allow us to exist, somewhat comfortably. But there's a simultaneous downside to that in that it obfuscates the deeper truth of who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd love to hear you explain that paradox.
Yeah, that's a tough one, because there's this illusion that we are the body and that we are the mind, and beyond that there's this truth that propels us forward, the divinity of this universal consciousness that animates everything. And we're here in physical vessels in this journey of remembering and forgetting that truth. So there's this journey of learning, um, and there are all these miracles within this fractal form, right? Of this fractal reality, all these different pointers towards divinity. And the deeper journey, I think, is remembering that truth. Like like every breath is feeding the heart and the 60,000 miles of blood vessels, and it's like the wings of the heart. There's just, the form has such mind-blowing, humbling beauty. All that is pointing to the divinity, right? And within that we can get lost in the journey of diving into more depth within any aspect of the being. So there also needs to be a process of letting go, of realizing that we can't know anything. It goes back to the Tao, universal Tao can't be understood, you know, and that one becomes two, becomes three, becomes 10,000. But 10,000, that's all of manifestation stems from the eternal Tao, that truth that can't be named, which goes into yin and yang, into polarity, into duality, and goes into the Trinity, goes into 10,000 things. There's infinite complexity, and things continue to become more complexified as we think, as we have intentions, as we create. So it's like letting that wave pattern collapse too. It is a paradox for sure. It's like it's like breathing. It's like the infinite expansion and then the absolute stillness and deeper truth.
Yeah, it just points back to, I think practically someone could hear this and go, okay, well, what the hell do I do with that? And I think just the simple answer is just always is just presence.
Presence. And enjoy it.
Yeah.
And keep your heart open. And just let yourself be in love with yourself and with life. Really be present. All your truths and your desires, and don't be attached to them. And yeah, notice that it's all grace. And yeah, what do I do with that? That's the question. What do we do with the paradox? We just show up.
Yeah. But I think there is a growing capacity to hold both.
For you?
Well, just in general. I mean, I think that's part of where a lot of this path leads, where it's like there is this truth that increasingly reveals itself, but there's also this truth that, you do have a body. You are, that is a vessel that you're experiencing. And the polarity of that can kind of just be more of a unification of both things, if that makes sense. That's at least what my experience has been. There can be reverence for both, is maybe a better word to say it.
They're different aspects of the same thing. It's like the utmost yin and the utmost yang will transform into each other, right? But the Tao will hold both of them. If we're using that metaphor, the Tao, the ineffable, what can't be understood. And the vessels that we have, the body and the mind, are how we go deeper into ourselves. So it's all serving.
Amazing, brother. Well, I think we have to land the plane here, but it's been such an honor just to have this conversation with you and to learn a little bit more about your experience in the healing arts. I wanted to just give you an opportunity to share more about, people are interested in potentially working with you or learning more about some of the stuff you do, how they can do that.
Sure. Thank you, brother. It's always an honor to work with you, and just admire your constant devotion to your own healing, uncovering, and willingness to go deeper.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm a very nomadic being, but I spent a lot of time in Austin, and starting to grow more of a social media presence. So you can reach me on Instagram. You can just look up Leberknight, which is my last name, Leber, and my platform there is Leberknight Saavedra, which I'm gonna do more with that. I'm intending to teach more, to facilitate. I think I'll be teaching a bodywork training in Goa later in the year with a friend in India, which will be really beautiful. And it's always such a humbling, beautiful honor to work with people where they're at. So I'm available for individual sessions. I'll be between Austin and Boulder for a while, and we'll have different hubs, but would love to stay in touch. And it's always there's always a listening to what needs to happen, and I'm very devoted to being a pure vessel for that. And there's constantly this thirst for more tools so that I can be of service to work with pain or with trauma, using different lenses of the body to help the heart be open, to help energy flow cohesively, to move blockages, and essentially to help beings remember their divinity and feel this aliveness and this presence with themselves, this ability to create ripples in their own lives. And it's an honor to do that, and it takes so many forms. And just consecrating this conversation, all the fruits, all the actions, thoughts, everywhere that it's been, all the different things that weren't spoken, all the fruits to divinity itself, and to beauty, and to love, and to remembrance, and honoring of the miracle of being alive, even if there's a lot of suffering, even if there's a lot of hardship. Just offering the fruits for the well-being of all. And I'm here, I'm present, so I would love to be available.
Thank you, brother. Well, everybody listening, I'll make sure to share Michael's Instagram so you can follow his work and get in contact with them if it's interesting to learn more. Thanks again, man. This was wonderful.
Thank you, brother, so much.